Hi guys, Ryan Fowler with Inner Masculine Live here with my good friend Teresa Kuhn, Inner Feminine. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the consequences of trauma, the consequences of subconscious trauma. It's not anyone's fault for having subconscious trauma. It happens in childhood, but there are tools we have to heal this trauma and not only get it out, but then put in the best subconscious beliefs and take off in life. And it causes subconscious trauma causes such a massive amount of maladies in humanity. It's such a massive, not just behaviorally, but health-wise, everything else. And Teresa and I have both experienced this firsthand because we had a lot of subconscious trauma that we managed to a really massive degree get out of us. So we're going to talk from our own experiences. We're going to talk, I have a clip to show. We've showed this clip once before, but it's just absolutely so core to what we're talking about. It's a 7-minute clip that we wanted to show it again and then use it as a point for further discussion. And Teresa hasn't had a chance to weigh in on this topic yet. So we're going to let her weigh in along with me. So Teresa, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Teresa.
The famous Teresa
Happy to be here. I'm inner feminine and Ryan is inner masculine.
Yep. And you are definitely feminine. So you can see, before we go further, you can see in the lower left of my screen, innermasculine.com/free ebook. The website is mostly or completely fixed now. So you can go to innermasculine.com/free-ebook. Just pop in your email and you will get a free ebook on how our subconscious mind works. And guess what? It talks about subconscious trauma too. Everyone knows our subconscious mind is incredibly important to our behavior and what we do. A lot of people have heard that 95% of our behavior is directed by our subconscious mind. And that's true. That is established science. All the scientists know that. But so many people have no idea what the subconscious mind does. They don't know how it affects us. So many people don't understand, why am I anxious? Why do I have these insecurities? Why do I self-sabotage? Why do I procrastinate? Why am I chronically depressed? Just whatever, all of these things. This book's going to explain the fundamentals of how our subconscious mind works and how it keeps you stuck. There's also ways to get the subconscious mind working for you. So instead of it keeping you stuck, it pushes you forward to get what you want in life and just to have natural, authentic confidence and feel good for who you are. So innermasculine.com/free-ebook. No cost, no obligation. You pop in your email, you get the ebook. There's actually, at the end of the ebook, a way you can schedule a no-cost 30-minute free consult with me as well. I'll help you however I can for 3 minutes. 30, I'm sorry. So, but that's for people who get the ebook. I don't just advertise that freely. But with that said, let's dive into the show. And we do have a very interesting clip about trauma and the effects it has. So I think we'll just go ahead and play that, Teresa, and then we'll just open it up for discussion, because this really sets the stage for how severe subconscious trauma from childhood can affect people the rest of their entire lives. So we're going to play this, and then we'll just open it up from there. And here we go, about 7 minutes. I might pause it a couple times for comments, but we'll go do this.
Involving 17,500 middle-class adults was that life experiences in childhood that are lost in time and then further protected by shame and by secrecy and by social taboos against inquiry into certain realms of human experience, that those life experiences play out powerfully and proportionately a half century later in terms of emotional state, in terms of biomedical disease, in terms of life expectancy. In 1985, I first became interested in developmental life experiences in early childhood, really by accident. In the major obesity program we were running, a young woman came into the program. She was 28 years old and weighed 408 pounds. asked us if we could help her with her problem, and in 51 weeks took her from 408 to 132. And thought, well, my God, we've got this problem licked. This is going to be a world famous department here. She maintained her weight at 132 for several weeks, and then in one 3-week period regained 37 pounds in 3 weeks, which I had not previously conceived as being physiologically possible. That was triggered by being sexually propositioned at work by a much older man, as she described him. And in short order, she was back over 400 pounds faster than she had lost the weight.
Now, there's a specific reason this triggered all her trauma and made her gain all the weight back. That was 12 pounds a week. More than 12 pounds a week, she started gaining again. So keep in mind what that trigger was, and then he's going to say what the trauma was, and we're going to use that to explain how our subconscious mind works. So here we go.
I remember asking her why the extreme response, after initially claiming not to have any understanding of why the extreme response. Ultimately, she told me of a lengthy incest history with her grandfather from age 10 to age 21. Ultimately, it turned.
So I don't know if you've noticed this, Teresa, but when, and I'm not saying this is all overweight women, it's a fraction of them. But one way women will protect themselves if they're in any sort of abusive relationship, sexually abusive or otherwise, is they gain weight to become unattractive. It's actually a defense mechanism. And their subconscious is saying, if I gain weight, this person will stop sexually assaulting me. I'll become less attractive. So molested by an older man in her childhood, same thing happens now. All that trauma gets triggered and just gains 270 pounds and then some back. It's not a coincidence. And this will tie into how the subconscious works when we go into more detail on this shortly.
Doubt that 55% of the people in our obesity program acknowledge the history of childhood sexual abuse. I mean, that
55%. Wow.
Obviously is not the only issue going on, but it was where we began. And as we went down that trail, then we discovered other forms of abuse, also growing up in massively dysfunctional households, etc. And the ACE study was really designed to see whether these things existed at all in a general population, and if so, how did they play out over time? We studied 10 categories of adverse life experience that were chosen because of their prevalence in the weight program: childhood sexual abuse, heavy-duty childhood physical abuse, I'm not talking spanking, major emotional abuse, recurrent humiliation, 2 categories of neglect, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, mentally ill, or in the state hospital, growing up in a home without both biological parents, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was alcoholic or a drug user, growing up in a home where mother was beaten, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was imprisoned during your childhood or adolescence. Those were the 10 categories. In a middle-class population, 1 in 11 people has experienced 6 or more of those adverse life experiences in childhood.
Middle class, 1 at 11, 6 out of 10. Very common.
Childhood. So this is
how many have had 1 of 10? These are all very severe.
Very common, totally unrecognized. It was difficult for us to accept their commonness. But on the other hand, these are issues that most people never touch. And so who would know without routinely asking? But at a so-called ACE score 6, experiencing any 6 of the 10 categories that we studied, that person was 4,600% more likely to become an IV drug user than a person who had experienced none of those 10 categories. Okay? Now, you think you read in the newspaper the latest cancer scare of the week, prostate cancer or breast cancer increases 30% and everyone goes nuts. I'm talking 4,600% increase. The same A score of 6 produces a likelihood of attempting suicide that is between 3,100 and 5,000% greater than the likelihood of suicide attempts in someone with none of those life experiences. So the power of this relationship is enormous. So ultimately, the question arises, how do life experiences in childhood end up with disease states a half century later? There are at least 2 big categories to account for that. One is through the use of various coping devices. One smokes to feel better, one overeats to feel better, one drinks to relax, etc. And those things carried out in heavy amounts have major destructive patterns, even though they may be immediately beneficial. The other broad category has to do with the effect of chronic major unrelieved stress on the workings of one's brain and central nervous system. In recent years, this is relatively new, it's become clear that chronic major unrelieved stress can produce the release of pro-inflammatory chemicals in a person's body and also can suppress immune system function. Of the 10 categories that we studied, any 6 of them produces a shortening in life expectancy of almost 20 years.
Let that sink in. 20 years.
Magnitude of this problem is so huge, and the complexity of dealing with it after the fact is so huge, that realistically the only serious approach is going to have to involve primary prevention. No one knows how to do that, but it's the right question to focus on.
Okay, I agree with everything except what he said at the end, Teresa, about the best way to handle it. Teresa, what's your take?
I was taking notes into, regarding the specifics and just keeping it at a high level to start. Someone might say, I don't meet any of those criteria, in terms of my childhood. I didn't have a parent in prison. I didn't have, my parents were pretty normal, et cetera.
Yeah. I only think I met like 1 or 2 of those. But the 1 or 2 were very severe, but keep going.
And it's a personal experience.
True. 100%.
You could, from the outside, not meet any of those criteria, right? And if you have a child who's sensitive to other people, my mom used to tell me that she'd look at me sideways and I'd put myself in the corner.
Wow.
Right. So
yeah, I was sensitive too.
So if I'm sensitive to what's going on outside of me and my mom looked at me sideways, objectively, no one would think anything of that. But I felt that I needed to go put myself in the corner to correct whatever shame I experienced by her looking at me a certain way. That could be considered traumatic for me. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying, it's a personal experience.
Yeah, subconscious programs are our interpretation of what things mean. It's the conclusions we draw as children growing up. Different children can draw different conclusions when the same thing happens to them.
Exactly. So there's this concept that Landmark talks about, but Landmark borrowed it from other people, but it's this concept of nothing has meaning except the meaning we give to it, right?
Exactly.
No experience has any meaning except the interpretation that we give that experience. So my mother could have looked at me sideways, and to you, it was nothing. To me, I interpreted that experience as something perhaps shameful, right?
Exactly.
So without even looking at all the different categories of, the 11 most,
That was what, 17,500 people they looked at, mostly middle class.
right.
Just
So
mainstream America. 1 in 11 had 6 of those.
had 6 of those, right?
1 in 11 had 6. And any one of those can really screw you up. You have an alcoholic parent and that's the only thing wrong, it's still gonna cause a lot of trauma.
Totally. And I'm one first generation born in this country from immigrants, and their family had immigrants in, a couple generations back. Immigrants overall, I think, carry a tremendous amount of trauma, right? And so maybe they don't, they're not part of any of these categories, but I didn't hear them say anything about immigrants, right?
Now, I think I know what you're talking about, but maybe explain to our audience why immigrants can have or often do have a lot of trauma.
Well, just think about where you are today. I know you're in Mexico. You chose to go to Mexico, but let's say you were forced to go to Mexico and you had to bring your family with you, or you maybe had to leave family behind. Maybe from a financial perspective, everything was taken from you. You were a doctor in another country and you ended up in Mexico having to, be a maid or work in a kitchen somewhere, right?
Many immigrants arrive here just dead broke. They spent everything they had to get here.
Right?
Or they had to flee their country for some reason. Yeah, all sorts of reasons. Yeah,
not to say that, from a political perspective, maybe they were persecuted. Maybe their parents or a sibling or a friend or a lover is in prison. Like, there's so many circumstances. And I would say trauma, I don't know. How do you define trauma? Let's keep it super simple. How do you define trauma?
Trauma is a subconscious belief tied to a painful feeling.
Okay. So
that is subconscious trauma.
You look at me sideways, I interpret that as a feeling.
Yeah, what do you think the belief there was? My mom looked at me sideways. That means
shame. I did something wrong.
I did something wrong, and I should be punished. So I'm just going to go to that corner right now. How's that?
And put my face in that corner. A lot of shame. Now, that came from somewhere also, but just to keep it super simple,
trauma, though.
You look at me a certain way, and I don't process. I don't have the tools to process the way you look at me, Ryan. And I'm making all sorts of interpretations. That emotion gets stuck in my body. The programming is there, right? Mm-hmm. And every time somebody else looks at me a certain way that reminds me of how you looked at me, that's triggered. Gets triggered every single time.
Yep, over and over again for the rest of your life, unless you fix that traumatic program.
And every time it happens, it embeds the trauma deeper, and the groove becomes deeper.
And this could happen when you're 5 years old. You form this belief, and at age 75, you're still getting triggered.
That's
how it works.
Exactly. That's how it works. And you talk to someone, and something happens, and you're like, "How could that impact you? Like, why are you taking it so wrong, or why are you taking it that way?" Obviously, it's coming from someplace else. It's not objective. It has nothing to do with objectivity. It has everything to do with how the person experiences it.
And go ahead.
The statistics are insane, right? Mm-hmm. It could cut your lifespan by 20 years. It impacts your lifestyle. It impacts the choices that you make in terms of drinking, drugs, careers you choose, people you're in relationship with, your children, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with other people, whether you become a smoker, whether you become a drug addict,
whether you become someone who traumatizes others because you have trapped anger and rage over this injustice, this abuse that was wrought against you. You don't know what to do with it, and it just comes out and spills onto others, and now you're messing other people up in their childhood, your children or whoever.
And you may not even remember what happened. You may never remember what the initial impact or the initial event that caused you to create this feeling.
Most people don't. Most people They know they have a temper problem, or they know they have anxiety all the time, or they have chronic depression, or they have certain insecurities in certain situations. They don't even know why. They forgot.
Hurt people, right?
Yep.
And there are a lot of people hurting other people. So it's I want to say it's unbelievable, but it's so believable based on what we know. And it's such a powerful, 7 minutes of describing the problem.
Yeah, so let's look at that overweight lady. They found out 55% of their morbidly obese patients were sexually abused. And what I said is that a defense mechanism for women who are chronically sexually abused is to gain weight, therefore less attractive, therefore maybe that will stop the abuse.
Yep.
And so now, let's say that maybe it stops the abuse, maybe it doesn't. But now as adults, they're like, I can't lose weight. And they can't even remember why. They're like, why can't I lose weight? And everyone else, this is something, okay, if someone's a life coach, some sort of counselor, therapist, whatever, if they don't look at subconscious trauma or at least understand the concept, their ability to help others is severely restricted. That's a bottom line. That is a bottom line, because 95% of our behavior is directed by these subconscious programs. And, whether you call it the manosphere or red pill or whatever, there are life coaches in there, and they're completely oblivious to this stuff. Like, so oblivious, it's kind of shocking, and it's, you have to understand this. So this, Andrew Tate, depression doesn't exist. Really, Andrew? Really? Have you looking at this stuff? You know who Andrew Tate is, I'm sure.
Of course. Yeah.
But if a life coach doesn't understand this and they're just like, why don't you do the work? Why don't you do what I told you? Maybe use them for 1 or 2 sessions just to get the information, but beyond getting information from them, their ability to help you is really low, honestly. You have to address and know about this stuff. So that lady who gained 400 pounds, they got her to lose it, and they said, this is amazing. She gained the weight because she was molested. And I know why she gained the weight. It's like, this will make me less attractive. And then the same thing happens. An older man in her workforce, after she's down 130 pounds, sexually propositioned her. It was a match for what happened from age 10 to 21. All that trauma got spiked again, and boom, back to 430. She gained 37 pounds in 3 weeks. It's like, yeah, how is that possible? And subconsciously, it's like, it's time for the defensive measures to come back up. I need to do this to be safe. And in this lady's mind, for her, being overweight kept her safe. And survival is above all. If I'm overweight, no one's going to sexually proposition me. And then, she'll go to some sort of weight loss clinic or whatever. And she's just like, why can't I lose the weight? Because this is all going on subconsciously, and most people don't even understand what's going on.
Yeah, she thinks she has a weight problem. No, she's got a trauma problem that's been unresolved.
She's got a trauma problem, and her subconscious is trying to keep her safe and protect her from sexual predators. Even though in reality, as an adult, she's not in this situation where she's living with someone and powerless anymore.
Exactly. She's got power now. And
brain doesn't understand
our defense mechanism, our subconscious mind, our programming, our feelings serve a purpose, and how amazing it is,
yeah.
Right? Her body said, her subconscious mind said, we need to keep you safe. So let's get you to a point where no one's going to find you attractive to keep you safe from predators. That may have served her when she was younger, that thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It no longer served her. And
now it's going to knock 20 years off her lifespan if she doesn't get healthy.
At least imagine weighing 400 pounds, losing all that weight to get to 132, and 3 weeks later, there's a triggering event and you start gaining that weight back. Do you think she's depressed? Do you think she's anxious? Do you think she's got shame? Do you think
Everything.
she's got all sorts of issues?
Got all of it.
That come
And then go ahead. I'm sorry.
That come back from losing that weight and regaining it. Like the stuff that's going on in her mind has got to be overwhelming.
100%.
God love her completely.
And then, for our audience listening, this is why you shouldn't judge others, because there's other people on the outside looking at her and they're saying, look at this fat woman. Why can't she get her act together? What a loser. And they have no idea the terrible crap trauma she went through. They don't know. So we shouldn't be too judgmental on ourselves or on others. If you're struggling, there's a reason why. The one thing that it didn't shock me. I do expect this, but it's kind of not shocking, but striking, is at the end, this scientist said, we got to find a way to prevent this because we don't know how to fix it. That's essentially what he said. Did you hear that? And it's like, that's where you're wrong, man. But that's the thing. Mainstream science doesn't know how to fix subconscious trauma. They, cognitive behavioral therapy, they know works somewhat on mild to moderate trauma less than half of the time. Those are the facts. That's the best they got. Fortunately, they're starting to figure out psychedelics and other stuff, but really that's the best they got right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and even with psychedelics, you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
You've got to do the work, right? And
they're even doing it improperly. They're doing like ketamine. Well, here's your ketamine. Have a nice day. And it's like, no, you got to do a guided session with it to really get the best results. They don't even understand that. Some of them understand it.
Yes, I've got a close friend who is an expert on ketamine. I don't know how many years, how many decades of experience. And she says that is it's going to be very interesting, the future of people that are using ketamine. She believes it is fraught with
It's
issues. It's going to be the next oxytocin in terms of what oxytocin was to pain. It's what's going to be in the psychological or the psychology world in terms of treatment with ketamine, because it is so addictive.
I did not know ketamine was addictive.
Ketamine is extremely addictive, and she thinks
it's really.
Wait a couple years and it's going to be crazy. But I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, Ryan.
Go for it.
Speaks to.
Go for it. Get us more views. Just kidding.
The controversy is this. All right, if you're walking around,
as long as it doesn't involve me, don't talk about that scandal I was involved in last year. No,
no.
Just kidding.
What scandal?
There's always one or another I'm involved.
All those skeletons in your closet.
Yep.
So what's controversial is so many people are walking around saying they're ADD, ADHD. They're anxious. They've got this or that, and they grew up in a relatively great childhood, and they're confused as to, or they're.
I got two brothers been diagnosed with this.
With ADD, ADHD.
One was ADD, the other was ADHD. Yeah.
And you were.
I was diagnosed as a train wreck.
As a train wreck, but you were manic depressive?
Manic depression, general anxiety disorder, complex PTSD, actually mild Asperger's too, but.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm here to say, I believe a lot of the ADD, ADHD is trauma-based.
Sure.
Anecdotal. I'm not a doctor. Totally get it.
Yep. Not medical advice, just our opinion.
Just my opinion. I see, the more people deal with their trauma and their stuck emotions in their body and reprogram their subconscious mind, the more present they become.
Yeah.
The less they need to dissociate, the less they need to go chase shiny objects. They're present, they're clear.
Yeah, what is this, like, constantly being distracted or constantly like having all it's and not being able to focus? I think that's right. I think it's dissociation to try and just disconnect from what's inside of you.
Absolutely. And we are living in a time that everything, all the YouTube videos, Instagram, like our brains are being
bombarded,
and we're getting used to having very short attention spans. I think that's absolutely the case, but I'm talking about, ADHD, where people can't be present, even in a conversation. I believe so much of that is a response to trauma. It's a response to feelings, emotions that have not healed or been processed, and subconscious programming. And I think once that gets healed, it's amazing how much more present one can be. It really
100%.
is. It's amazing.
Yeah. So what I say over and over again, our brain motivates us towards pleasure, but above all, strongest program, avoid pain. We can use pleasure to cover pain. That's addiction, and it's addictive, especially when you feel pain because of what you did. Oh, I viewed porn again. Oh, I drank too much alcohol again. Oh, I did cocaine again, whatever. You feel bad from the addictive behavior that you need to cover pain. That's when the addictions become really powerful. But people can also just shut down their feelings, dissociate, watch YouTube for hours, go through social media, this, that, and the other, and all in an attempt to disconnect from this trauma because it is painful and it freaking sucks. And our brain, above all, wants us to not feel that pain anymore. But when you have subconscious trauma, it's trapped inside of you. And you either, if it's really big, you can feel it at a low level all the time, constantly. That's been my experience. I've been there. I've had low level anxiety, chronic depression, like as a constant thing. And it could last for weeks at a time, like all the time. Or what's, more common is you feel fine and then something gets triggered, but you can get triggered all the time. So maybe you don't have anxiety 24/7, but you can have anxiety way more than you should. Why am I procrastinating this task? Why is my urge so strong to play video games? And it's like, I just got to do this and I can't do it. It's so hard. People put stuff off till the last second. Why do they have all this eternal resistance? It's tied to their brain is associating the potential to trigger painful subconscious programs with things they need to do. They could feel pain for not doing it. Now they're a lazy bum. They can feel pain for doing it and doing it wrong, and others disapprove. I remember when I was growing up, I was given chores, and after I did the chore, I did it the best I could, but I was like 6 years old. My mom would always come by and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and just, because she's a narcissist, and it has to be perfect, and she's always going to find, I'm a 6-year-old kid, and that caused a ton of anxiety and procrastination later in life, because my brain is like, if you do this, your mom's going to find something wrong, and now you're going to feel bad because you didn't do it good enough. And the brain is like, there's pain tied to this chore or this task, like even like just, cleaning dishes, whatever. There's pain attached to this. So I would resist doing that stuff. And then after I went in and cleared my internal world, I just automatically started cleaning my house more, because the resistance to doing that, the potential pain to doing that, as far as these childhood it wasn't there anymore. Instead, I felt good. And the number one key to people taking off and having success in life is remove all these pain blocks, remove all this internal subconscious trauma. And if you have no pain in you that can get triggered, you now have no resistance to doing things. You just now pursue pleasure. You go after what you want. We use pleasure in a very, very broad sense, meaning you get pleasure from hugging a child, you get pleasure from helping a homeless man on the street, or you get pleasure from making $1 million or launching your next project, or surfing on the beach, whatever. People go through life and they stay small because they see potential pain, the trauma in them getting triggered. They see their subconscious mind sees the potential for pain everywhere. Get rid of that so there's no more painful subconscious programs that could be triggered. And then what our brain is designed to do, which is motivate us to pursue pleasure, get all these good things. There's no resistance to doing that. And so we just naturally go out and kick ass. That's our natural state when you get rid of trauma. You go out and get what you want and kick ass and have a good life. It's
And
automatic.
what comes up for me in all that you said, you know, people who procrastinate because they don't want to feel the shame of doing something wrong or taking on new projects.
They can feel bad from not doing it, and that causes procrastination because our limbic hindbrain, all our limbic brain sees, here's a situation tied to potential pain, even if the pain comes from not doing it, will give us resistance.
And what do we know
I
about
hear
success?
that
What do we know
dozens of
about
times.
success? It is about failing forward. Success is about failing forward. It's feedback, right? When you go do something, you get feedback. And 9 times out of 10, the feedback is going to be, oh, you need to do this a different way because you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. If you're procrastinating, or if you've got, you know, you were raised by someone who demanded perfection, guess what you don't want to do? Fail forward. You don't want to try things and get the feedback that you failed because it's so darn painful. If
That's
you
what keeps people small.
clear all that out, guess what? Failing forward, trying things is no longer painful. In fact, it becomes interesting, right?
Yeah.
I've got a very close friend. He has 4 kids and they have a round table for dinner every night. And part of the conversation every single night is, what did you try and what did you fail doing today?
That's great.
It's to program, hey, failure is okay, which it is. It's just feedback.
I think I know who that person is, but I won't.
Yes,
say
you do.
I won't
And
say
we
who it
know
is.
that
I just know this guy's personality. That's great.
That's
awesome.
exactly what it is, right?
Yep.
And it's about failing forward. Trying things out is feedback, right? We get feedback from that. And that feedback corrects our path to moving towards success. But if you're afraid to fail forward because of shame, because of childhood trauma, because of a controlling parent, because of whatever, we will not move forward.
Yep. In order to up level and advance in life, we have to learn new things, which involves when you're a beginner at anything, you make many mistakes. You pick up a guitar, you never played it before, you're trying to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb, you're going to make hundreds of mistakes before you master it. And the problem with subconscious trauma is when we make these mistakes, it triggers pain and people want to give up, or they just don't do it in the first place and they stay small. So remove subconscious trauma. And that's the thing, is this is what we do. You've helped remove people's subconscious trauma. You removed your own subconscious trauma. Ditto for me. And we see my income doubled within 2 years. It doubled again. I've seen it for many other people. You can go on my the video section and look at all these testimonials, mostly men, but some women too. You know, there's I do sessions for anyone. I just specialize in helping men, and you just see people take off time after time after time. So many people, oh, I don't have subconscious trauma. It's like, well, probably, you know, honestly, 99% chance you have some, and you'd be doing way better if you got it out of you. So even the people who aren't severely traumatized, there's still some stuff there that's holding you back.
Absolutely. We all, you know, maybe it happened in the schoolyard. Maybe, you know, you were bullied at school. Maybe a teacher didn't like you at school. You know, one of the sure signs I've found, you know, because I can't chit chat with anyone. I have to go deep. And so if someone is a superficial type of conversationalist, we're not going to connect. I go deep. And when I'm going deep with someone and childhood comes up, if someone says to me, oh, I had a great childhood. I had a perfect childhood. I had a ideal childhood.
I have clients say that, and then we dig in and they're like, oh shit, no, I didn't.
Yes. That's a clue to me that they are clueless, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean that they are. It's just, I find it interesting. When
there are a small number of people who I talk to, and 95% of their inner world is actually quite healthy. I mean, it's a small section of people. I do find those types of people, but coincidentally, they're kicking ass in life. They have a great life. Doesn't mean, kicking ass doesn't mean you're a multimillionaire, but it means you have a great life. Like I I did a session for this lady, and it was actually more physical pain abatement because she got in a very severe accident. But I got to look at her internal world, and she only had a couple bad internal programs. But then her life was been married to this guy for 25 years, very happy, great family. I mean, the life just looked great. It was like in many ways she had an ideal life. And that's what you'll see, you know, and not many people have like lives at this level of just, wow, you love your husband, you guys are like having all sorts of fun together, and you're doing well financially, and like everything's clicking. But when you're emotionally healthy, that's what an emotionally healthy person's life looks like. Doesn't mean there's not challenges. She got in a severe accident. She had severe physical trauma. I mean, stuff happens, but
Yeah.
when you have a good internal world, on the whole, your life is great. And if you are struggling with stuff, procrastination, certain insecurities, you have a temper, whatever, guess what? There is subconscious trauma there. Period. That's how it works. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Totally. 1000%.
And it can be fixed.
And even people who have severe physical pain, yes, go get the therapy, go get the treatment, and go work on your subconscious. I really think, I believe.
Yeah, why not do that and up-level your life? Your life's
totally.
okay now. It could be better. Why not?
I believe in, running parallel tracks, having a team of professionals for any issue that you've got, right?
Sure.
If you go to a doctor, a medical doctor, they're going to see the world through their filter. If you go to a physical therapist, if you go to an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, a naturopath, a subconscious programming coach, like everybody looks at life from their profession, and they've got a tool to heal. If you've got something chronic, absolutely go develop your team and go solve the issue from a team perspective. Even physical pain, go find out from a programming perspective what the issue is. Louise Hay, she passed away, but she had a lot of books and a lot of references to physical pain being connected to emotional pain. So if you had pain in your back, I don't remember, I'd have to pull this up exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it up. If you had lower back pain, it was related to anger, for example. Or if you had issues with your throat, it was related to not speaking your truth.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So many physical ailments and issues with emotional trauma.
Yeah, 100%.
Fascinating.
And it's not like that across the board with absolutely everything. I had a very bad herniated disc that I needed surgery for. The surgery fixed it 100%. It wasn't an emotional issue. It was an injury. But there are many times where people can have physical pains. It's really suppressed emotional pain. You suppress it, and then it manifests physically.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
so
Ryan,
and they noted, they said your lifespan of these severely traumatized people almost 20 years shorter.
20 years shorter.
They talked about all this inflammation that happens in your body from subconscious trauma in that video clip. They said, hey, you can have addictions and other destructive things, but even if you don't have addictions and you have trauma, it sends out hormones that cause inflammation in your body, and inflammation is the precursor to all disease, physical disease. That was in that clip that we saw.
That's a tremendous clip.
Yeah.
It's a great clip.
So can you afford to keep, people who have subconscious trauma not only struggle in certain ways, and in many ways their life is fine. This is on a spectrum. We're not saying everyone's severely subconsciously traumatized. It's like a bell curve. There's a lot of people that have moderate trauma, and then there's a few people who have, I wouldn't say a few, because this clip talked about, 1 in 11 people in this middle class survey had 6 out of 11 of these severe markers of trauma. 6 out of 11. That's freaking massive. But it is a bell curve. There's less people with really severe trauma, and there's a lot in the middle who have moderate trauma, which means their life isn't terrible, but man, it could be better if they got rid of that moderate trauma. And then there's a few who have just a little trauma, and their lives tend to look really good overall. They tend to be just happy, confident people. So for 90% of us, clear out your internal world. It will bring huge dividends. So we've experienced that,
Personal experience. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you have any final comments on any of this?
I don't. I love that clip. I'd add it to the YouTube so that people can use it as a reference. And there's so much great information on that little clip for people who think, I don't know. This was mainstream. This is a mainstream medical doctor who did research, and this is what he found.
They had a team. They had a whole clinic.
They had a whole clinic.
Yeah,
yep.
He was one of the lead guys. So that is our show for today. Subconscious trauma, extremely prevalent. If you're watching this, 95% chance you got some that your life would benefit from clearing it out. I'll say right now, the solution. I think hypnosis is by far the most flexible when it's done right. Hypnosis is just a canvas, and you can have a particular practitioner who knows how to finger paint on the canvas, and that's it. And then you can have a very skilled artist who can really do well. I think EMDR also, it can be very, very effective at removing trauma. 90% of the people who do it are psychologists who took a 1-week course, 2-week course, and they're honestly not that good. I did a session for a really skilled EMDR practitioner. His training after he got his master's degree in counseling, he took almost a full year of full-time additional training to really learn EMDR. That's what it takes. And so if you go to an EMDR person and they haven't taken really extensive training on that, you need but EMDR, when it's done right, can be very effective at resolving trauma. And I do think certain psychedelics can also be very helpful. But like Teresa said, it's a drug. At the end of the day, it's a drug. So there is some caution, advised there. But I do know certain psychedelics can, for some people, be very helpful at releasing trauma, and different ones are legal in different jurisdictions. Ketamine's legal almost everywhere, but that's very interesting what you said about it being addictive. I'm going to Google that afterwards.
Very addictive. I do want to say something.
Yeah.
I want just a little bit of clarity. I believe what we grew up hearing were drugs, and many times can be medicine. And what we grew up thinking was medicine actually are drugs.
100%. They call it medicine, and it's drugs in mainstream.
Yes.
Mainstream druggison, not mainstream medicine, more often than not. 100%.
Right. And is there a place for ketamine? Absolutely. And the way they're pushing ketamine today, it's just so interesting.
Well, it makes you wonder. Number one, it's been around since 1953. So why the hell did you or 57? Why the hell did you just figure out benefits now? Well, because a cascade of scientific studies have been coming out saying SSRIs, the normal antidepressants, are shit. A cascade of studies, massive amounts of studies saying you get no long-term benefit from these drugs that they've been pushing since the early 90s, since Prozac came out. Ridiculous. Did you know 70 years ago, medical doctors would prescribe smoking to some of their patients?
Yeah, well,
blows your mind. How
stupid. And
I'm not saying they're much of what they do.
There are cultures that use tobacco from a medicine perspective, right? There are medicinal qualities to tobacco. That's not the cigarettes we have today. We know the cigarettes we have today are full of chemicals and garbage, right?
Tar and all that crap.
Tar and all that stuff. But, if you look at the advertising from the 50s, pregnant women smoking cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
Same as all of that, right? Just.
Yeah. You want to lose weight? Here's a weight loss prescription. Start smoking, or just whatever. It's ridiculous.
Follow the money. Follow the money. I'm going to say, in the psychedelic medicine community, you got to follow the money as well, right? I'm not saying that area is not fraught with issues, because it absolutely is.
Why is it an artificial drug that they're ketamine that they're pushing instead of peyote, naturally occurring herbs?
And in the medicine community, there are a lot of issues there as well, right?
Yep.
But just from a medicine perspective, you know, drugs, what they called drugs before, I think many times can be considered as medicine, and what they've been calling medicine for a long time, I'd put in the drug category. But that's just me, not a professional opinion. Just
not a professional opinion, just personal opinions. That's our show. Subconscious. If you guys are struggling, really any insecurity, anxiety, excessive anger, not feeling good about yourself, not believing in yourself, wondering why you're stuck, why you self-sabotage, why you procrastinate, anything, look at subconscious trauma. It can be fixed. That's what we do. So that's our show for today. Thanks for, well, actually, you know what? I have had this full screen so much, and I haven't even looked at the comments. I'm sorry, guys. I usually do. Tim Costello, gorgeous pattern. Yes, I do like, I'm a little jealous of her studio. It looks better than mine. That's the problem of being in Mexico City. I get a nice Airbnb, and it's like, it's whatever I can find. But yours looks great, Teresa. Tim, thank you. And P-Dubs, my loyal listener, always gives me a thumb up and red pill up. Thank you, P-Dubs. Pretty much every video he does that. I love this guy. So thanks, guys, for watching. That's our show. You can get this stuff out if you put bad subconscious programs out, put good ones in, and then your life takes off, and then you realize, oh, dang, I didn't realize this, but now that I'm self-aware and cleaning my internal world, I actually have more power than I know. That's our show. Thank you.